I want to talk again about the reality versus imagination problem, or what I would say as a human's human beings dilemma, which is also a deep existential and philosophical dilemma that we as human beings have. I've talked about this already in actually a lot of my previous videos. You can try go to look them up. Um, what's it. But I just want to share again. Because this is also what really just now. It just really frustrates me. It's really frustrating. I just actually chat with AI, especially in using Grok, Grok, Grok from X from Twitter. Yeah. Um, it's really frustrating, and even to be very honest, if you already know about my YouTube channel, right, and if you already look at my previous YouTube videos, right, I really honestly talk, that reality is depressing. Um reality is depressing. Okay, this reality, this real world, you know it just because it cannot be compared to our imaginations, our humans imaginations. It will never reach up to the level of the unlimited possibilities, the exciting, wonderful, boundless worlds, universes, realms of imagination, or of our human imagination. Most creative and imagination can even create, the most as you already know, the most imaginative, wonderful fictions, right? Fictions, stories, fantasy, sci-fi, science fiction, all those movies, films, games, you know um, novels, comic books, manga, anime, light novels, manhwa, uh, anything, right? Basically, arts, work of art, music, paintings, whatever. You know what I mean, right? And we can never live inside that imagination world, and no matter, even especially nowadays, what this is the very frustrating, right? Even today, right, nowadays, we have the technology, like, yeah, well, AI, for example, and then there is a VR, virtual reality, and then augmented reality, AR, and then probably with the future, I don't know, this is still highly speculative, but maybe the future, the about the mind uploading, which is allegedly it will take us into the unlimited digital realms, right? But we don't know, right? We don't know for sure, whether it will ever happen or not. See, reality is often disappointing. Even Thanos said this. Reality is often disappointing. He's right. There is no guarantee, that any progress, can be destroyed, crushed, basically, by some stupid things, in reality. That's what really depressing, not just only frustrating, okay? Not just only frustrating, it's really depressing. If you look at the I video, I purposely intentionally, put this video again outside of my room's window, right? You can take a look at the nature's beauty, right? I even admit, look at all those, the pink flowers, the leaves, right? The trees and everything, right? A lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people will say, oh, it's beautiful, See, reality can be beautiful too, real life, real world. Life can be beautiful. Life is beautiful. Some people will say that, a lot of people, actually most people will say that, it wouldn't even surprise me, oh, life is beautiful, life is a gift, oh, life is wonderful, oh, life is good, all those things. Life is a gift, life is a blessing, thanks God, thanks universe, all those, platitudes, right? Platitudes, generic cliche normist platitudes, right? You know what I'm talking about, you know what I mean, right? Especially those of you who've already watched this YouTube channel, which is almost like maybe just only 1 or 2 person people. Thank you, really. I deeply appreciate it. See, again, reality is often disappointing. Algorithm, whatever, my video will never reach, you know. I'm thankful, for there were some previous 1, 2, or 3 comments. It really means a lot for me, right? But again, it's still really frustrating and depressing, because see, even in the most practical sense, right? In the most practical sense, you know, um, in the most practical sense, let me just switch to my face, okay? Hi. Okay, let me continue. Sorry for the motorcycle and outside noise, but you can hear my voice, right? Let me check again. Oh yeah, okay. I don't even know how to switch the camera on and off. I'm afraid. See, yeah. Anyway, even in the most practical sense, right? In the most basic, very basic, realistic sense, like even our expectation, right? Our expectation, the most practical, the most pragmatic, realistic. Okay, I'm talking about all those, realistic people who are really so grounded in reality. Okay, um, even them, all these normal people, normies people, which you basically just see every day, which we just usually see every day, everywhere you go, right? Even those people, in the very, very, very basic sense, okay, we're talking about, expectation, right? Even our most basic level of expectations sometimes cannot even be fulfilled, you know what I mean, by this, by reality, by the reality of things, right? By the reality of the situation, the of life, basically, the circumstances, the conditions, situations, things, people, or whatever, right? So you see what I mean, right? My point, you see my point, you get my point. It's basically this whole reality versus imagination thing is just unbridgeable gap. There is an unbridgeable gap that we cannot, it cannot ever close. You know, no. Some people, you can say realistic, real again. If we're talking still about in the most practical, realistic realm, everyday's life, right? I mean, yeah, some people are lucky enough. I've talked about this in many of my previous videos. You can go watch the videos. I mean, I've talked about how some people are lucky. Of course, some people are lucky that they can get what they dream. Their dreams, their dreams come true. Their dreams become reality. Stuff like that, right? But I think for many people, for a lot of people in this world, I think, we can only imagine, we can only, even our most, again, like I've said, right, even our expectation, um, that's why there is this popular meme, internet meme, right, meme, right, reality versus expectation, right. Let me repeat again: reality versus expectations. Because why? Because it will never happen, right? Because as simple as, those two are different realms. Those two, the reality versus image expectation. It's the same basically with this whole reality versus imagination thing I often talk, in this YouTube channel, right? Let me switch back again. We can never live up to our most vivid, vivid, unlimited, most creative, imaginative imaginations. You know, no pun intended. Okay, and that's what's really frustrating, and even I would very honestly say, what's really depressing. Really, really depressing about this whole, about life. About existence, about this existence, you know this world, this life, whatever, this reality. Actually, it's not one of my main, no, it's actually my major cause of existential depression is because of this, basically, the reality versus imagination. It's the fact that, that I don't know why, maybe I'm crazy or anything, I don't know, I just don't know, knowing that me knowing eventually that, we have all these thoughts, this imagination, these ideas, this that can never become reality, you know what I mean, that we can never live inside those imaginations, you know most people most people don't think about it, don't even feel about this, most people, they just go. I've talked about this also in a lot of my videos. Most people, they just live, they just live every day, they just go, following the script, right, for the matrix, they just live inside the matrix, right, so to speak, they just go to work, they just go to school, they just, you know from morning until night, and then go wake up again tomorrow, repeat the same thing again, again and again, sorry, I'm just checking, for, don't mind about the camera switch, okay, I'm just checking if it's recorded or not, see. I'm such a loser for cannot figure it out, even how to switch the camera back and front, sorry about that, just to make sure it's still recording, okay. You have no idea, like how 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 depressing this all feels, for me, actually, for me personally speaking, It's just so depressing, knowing that, there will always be this gap, this unbridged, like I've said, right? In an unbridgeable gap between reality versus imagination, right? We cannot live, we can imagine, but we can never live up to those imaginations, you know, or you can say expectation or whatever, dreams, wish, fantasy, hopes, even prayers, sometimes, some prayers are never get answer, right? Some prayers, you know, we can human people can pray a lot, even if we're talking about in the religious spiritual level, right? In the normal sense, the most normal sense, normal way, normist way, even you sometimes pray and it never get answer, right? You still get disappointed by reality, right? Basically, you know what I mean right? I'm not talking about just only me myself, I'm talking about life, basically life in general. Okay, humans human beings, we as human beings, we have this capacity, capability to be able to imagine things that doesn't exist in reality, in real life, in real world, you know what I mean. That's why we create stories, that's why we create, we create all these movies, games, everything, right? Art. In terms of science, right? Technology. Sometimes what we I keep reading, or see hearing, people keep saying, oh yeah, some dreams do become reality though, look at, the technology progress and the science, everything. Yeah, I know what they mean, I know what all these people mean, but come on, it's not the same. If you want to really be brutally really honest, real honest about all of this, it's not the same, it's just not the same, like for example, I can imagine, for example, like Star Trek, right? Star Trek, Star Wars, but it will never happen. Well, you can say, you can, some people will say, oh, maybe it will happen in the, in the far future, but you'll never know, right? And there is always going to be a limit, like where reality can never be able to, live up to the highest imaginations. You see what I mean? It will always be one step, uh the imagination will always be one step ahead of the reality, or even a thousand steps, a million steps ahead of, far, beyond this reality, you know what I mean. People just bullshit, people just lacking imagination when they keep saying, oh, your dreams can become true, you can, it's just bullshit, no. A lot of dreams will never become reality, a lot of dreams will never become true. A lot of dreams will just remain as dreams, remain as dreams, because it's just not real, it's just not realistic enough. You see the word that I hate the most, realistic, right? Oh, everything have to be realistic, right? Realistic, grounded, you know I've talked about this in my previous video, right? We are so limited, reality is limited, limiting, you know we are constrained, we are limited by a lot of things, whether it's money, financial, economic, people, other people, can sometimes limit us, to do things that we really want. We are limited by society, we are constrained by all these rules, that humans make, by all this bureaucracy, procedural, we are even limited by responsibilities, right? We are limited by, you know So many things, health, for example, health, some people, got sick, chronically ill, pain, disease, or whatever, right? You know what I mean, right? I don't have to explain further. You can just go look at my previous videos for this. I've talked a lot about this problem. This reality is limiting, these limitations. We cannot be free to be anything that we want. That's bullshit. That's fucking bullshit. Sorry. I've talked about this in my previous video. This YouTube channel is about truth, right? No bullshit, no nonsense. You can find all those bullshit craps, everywhere, anywhere else. Basically, there are so many in YouTube, even in YouTube. You can just go look those bullshit type of videos. Toxic positivity, optimism bias, whatever. All those happy videos. But reality is often disappointing, like Thanos said, right? He's right. Let me switch back again to nature. Like the fact that we humans can imagine, other worlds, basically we can even conjure up, we human being can even create another worlds, another universe, another realms, another, infinite boundless imaginations of universes, another universe, another world, another dimension, another realm, but then, like, we know that we are still forever, stuck and trapped here, in this real life, real world reality, this mundane, boring, petty, trivial, nonsensical, ridiculous, stupid bullshits that we have to deal every day in our real life, right? Real world reality, right? Life, in this world, in this society, dealing with humanity, the other people, whatever, right? It's just depressing, it's not only frustrating, but it's just depressing, really, really depressing. If you really think deeply, if you really think deeply about it, like I do, like I've always do, let me hold on, let me check a little bit. Yeah, okay. Okay, so I think I have to close this video, because, you know I have to go down, do something else, eat basically. So yeah, um, can any of you relate, deeply relate, at least with what I'm feeling, if any of you are watching this video? See, but I'm really thankful, for some of you who are really watching this video, and especially if you comment in this video, it really means a lot, in this depressing reality, right? In this depressing reality, everyday's reality, everyday's life. Yeah. Thank you everyone for watching. As usual, leave a comment, like, or subscribe or anything. It will really means a lot for me personally. Okay. Take care everyone. Bye bye.